Welcome back. We're live in Studio B. This is your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play. I am Spencer Linton, Jerem Jordan to my left, and now joining us is our good friend and longtime contributor to this program, ESPN College Football Insider. Typically, he does Matich Mondays. It is a Matich Tuesday with ESPN's Trevor Matich. Trevor?
A Trevor Tuesday, if you will.
Oh, nice. I like that play on words. How is your Tuesday going thus far?
It's a great Tuesday. It's a whole lot better because of the big win in the bowl game. I mean, a lot of people didn't expect that, but that makes Tuesday a whole lot better.
Understandably. How much different do you view the season based on what BYU did, yes, in the bowl game with the victory over SMU, but the way that BYU finished the season after the winless October?
It changes everything, doesn't it? I mean, they go 0-4 in October, then they finish out the season 4-0. And the thing is, they had all kinds of excuses to let the wheels come off of this thing, but instead they came together and they fought and they finished strong. And the way they finished was impressive. I mean, with Jaren Hall being banged up in those last two games against Stanford, they put it on the offensive line, and the offensive line just pounded away. And then in the bowl game, same way. They said, look, we're going to throw the ball a half a dozen times. We'll see what happens, or we'll complete a half a dozen anyway. And we're just going to pound the ball. And how did they respond? They responded by rising to the occasion, by being that physical group that we had hoped they would be all season long. The defense, especially in that bowl game, with all the new coaches and all the different things they were doing, all the different attacking that they were doing, the defense rose to the occasion and made play after play against one of the best offenses in the country. And I think you have to look at this season from a standpoint of what did they do at the end under adversity? And what they did was exactly what you would hope they would do in a perfect scenario.
And you hope that in the future, BYU can somehow figure out how to not be so injured so that they can have most of their best players out there, because BYU at the beginning of the year was a very different squad than BYU at the end of the season. And yes, they win 4 in a row, and they win 8, and that was great. Nice finish to the season. How would you summarize this year, given the expectations at the beginning, given the 4-5 first 9, and then given the last 4 wins?
Overall, it did not go as expected. I thought this was a 10 or 11 win team, even with the schedule that they had. The injuries played a part in it. Lack of execution played a part in it. Sometimes they ran into a buzzsaw. They ran into teams that were just hot at the wrong time for the Cougars. And so if you look at it from a standpoint of total wins over the season, it's not what I had hoped. It's not what a lot of people expected. But again, you look at it from a standpoint of the seasons of the season. Started great, then it became disastrous. Then it finished strong. And I think that the way it finished builds the culture and gives them momentum going into the offseason. So I can't say that the season is the success that it should have been from a record standpoint, but I think you can say that going into the offseason, they have to feel very good.
Trevor Matich of ESPN with us on BYU Sports Nation. Let's turn our attention to Jaren Hall and decision time for the BYU quarterback. Trevor, in your opinion, what do you think Jaren Hall should do, and when should he make that decision?
He should go to the NFL, and he should make that decision about 2 weeks ago. Because his first priority, his first responsibility is to his family. He's married. He's got a young child. He's got to make sure he does the right thing by his family first. But at the same time, the longer he delays, the more it puts his teammates, or maybe former teammates, at a disadvantage, maybe a massive disadvantage. And so while I don't think that it's fair to put pressure on him to say, you got to make the decision right now, he's got to make the decision when it's best for his family. But at the same time, part of what factors into the timing of his decision needs to be the people that are relying on that decision, people that have been so good to him over the last several years at BYU. So the decision should have already been made. I'm not sure what information he's waiting on. Maybe there's an NIL deal that may get him to stay, and maybe he's waiting on the conclusion of that. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe there's more information coming in from the NFL, although I don't know what that might be. Because right now, when you look at where he would be in the NFL, he'd probably be about a mid-round, maybe late-round draft choice. And at worst, he would be on a practice squad making a couple $100,000 a year while he develops. Now, at best, he'll get drafted and he'll be higher than people expect, and he'll go in and make a roster, and he'll come out his rookie year and do great things. But at the same time, I think the best risk-reward balance for him right now is to leave. And if you're going to get hurt while you're playing for an NFL contract. Hopefully you won't get hurt, and he will be able to move on from there. That, to me, is the best thing, and the decision is to be made about 2 weeks ago.
Starting left guard and stalwart the last couple of years, Clark Barrington last night entered the transfer portal. His brother Campbell has already entered and committed to go to Baylor following Jeff Grimes and Eric Mateos. Any concern about the Barringtons leaving?
Well, you don't get better with those guys leaving, right? But at the same time, this is an offensive line that's got a lot of depth. They've played a lot of guys, different guys at different positions, and they're going to be fine on the offensive line next year. They'll be more than fine on the offensive line next year. It does surprise me that Clark is leaving, just because left tackle Blake Freeland looks like he is going to the NFL. And I think that Clark Barrington really ought to be playing left tackle in his final year in college. And I thought this was the place to do it. He could just slide out and play left tackle in the same system, because physically he's got the build of an NFL left tackle much more than guard. But at the same time, if his brother wants to go and he wants to play a year in college with his brother, there's a lot to be said for that, because how often do you get to play with your brother on a major college football team? So that is that's a big deal. A lot of things that we don't know. We don't know what kind of NIL has been promised relative to collectives. We don't know when teams, when players transfer. A lot of things could be happening behind the scenes, just besides there's something wrong with the program that they're leaving. A lot of things could be going on. Keep this in mind, too. And I'm not talking about any particular BYU player. I'm talking about in general terms around the country. There are a lot of players that transfer for very good reasons of their own. There are players that transfer because the coaches have decided that they're not the fit that they thought, and the coaches invite those players to continue their college career elsewhere. So there's all kinds of things happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. There may be NIL money that was expected that wasn't delivered, and guys say, okay, you broke your promise, I'm out of here. I'm not pointing to any particular school, any particular player. What I am saying is that it's hard to judge players for their decisions to leave based on the superficial information that we know. And if Clark decides he wants to go play with his brother Campbell for a year of college football, and there's nothing else involved, that's a fair decision.
Trevor, as BYU pushes to Power 5 status and the Big 12, and with the quarterback in flux, whether it's Jaron Hall or another high-level quarterback that comes out of the transfer portal, combined with some of the assets that you just talked about that BYU brings back on the offensive line and in some other places, what are your way too early expectations for BYU in year one of the Big 12?
Very competitive in year one in the Big 12 if the quarterback situation gets resolved. If Jaron Hall comes back and he's healthy, or if they're able to get a guy from the transfer portal or that hotshot freshman that comes in that's able to carry this offense, because the offensive line will be good. There's strong running back room, a lot of outstanding young up-and-coming wide receivers. This offense should move. And we saw, I think, a glimpse of what the defense can be when they attack in the bowl game. I mean, they did stuff that just almost made me fall off my chair against SMU. I mean, they ran zone blitzes. They were bringing corners for pass blitzes, corners on run blitzes. They were doing different things that we haven't seen a whole lot of this year. And it was successful in holding down one of the best offenses, certainly one of the best passing offenses in college football, those SMU Mustangs. And so I think that combination will make them competitive just like it is. I think that combination will make other recruits and transfer portal potential guys want to come play for BYU, especially on defense, because defensive players want to attack. And I would just suggest that you go look at the Louisville-Cincinnati bowl game. I think it was the Fenway Bowl, right? The Wasabi Fenway Bowl, where Louisville, they both had interim coaches, et cetera. Louisville's defense decided, we're just going to go get them. We're just going to go attack like crazy. And they did, and they won. And it was fun to watch, and it was fun for them to play. BYU is transitioning into that kind of style right now. And I think it all adds up to the ability to maximize their potential. And that's what they'll need to do to be competitive in the Big 12 in their first year.
We may not want to hear it, but BYU's defense is trying to be like Utah's defense. And Utah's defense has been awesome for a decade plus. But the influences of Kalani and Jay Hill and others are certainly strong with those defenses up there with Kyle Whittingham. Okay, let's finish with this. Next year, BYU enters the Big 12. We don't know the schedule yet. We thought we'd get it in December. Sounds like it might wait until February with Texas and Oklahoma, maybe leaving after a year in flux, blah, blah, blah. Don't know the quarterback situation. Don't know everybody going in the NFL. Do you have a standard for BYU next year and an expectation higher than make a bowl game?
Yes. The standard is, make a bowl game, definitely. Although we talk about Sam Houston as one of the non-conference games next year. Sam Houston is nationally known for being a high-flying offense. I mean, that is not a cupcake. So BYU fans shouldn't look at that as a runway heading into the rest of the schedule. Sam Houston is tough. At the same time, I think BYU, my expectation for them is to get everything out of the potential that they have. They're going to run into teams that may have more talent top to bottom. They're going to run into teams that have got a lot of momentum. What I want to see, though, is BYU's athletes in position doing the right things with the right technique, with fury, with violence, and with precision. And then when you make contact with the opponent and things start to break down, then the opponent has something to say with what happens. But I want to see them maximize everything that they've got and then let the chips fall where they may. How many wins that turns into, I'm not sure in the first year. I have high expectations. I'd love to see them get to 8 wins in their first year in the Big 12. That would be an amazing accomplishment, I believe. But at the same time, they might win more. They might win less, but it's that competitive fire and the technical precision that I want to see out of them in their first year in the Big 12. That is my expectation.
I love it. I think you just explained the way you played the game, Trevor, with fury, violence, and precision.
Hey, I was coached by Roger French and Mel Olson. There was no other way.
I love it. Trevor, thanks for the time. We'll do it again soon, and we look forward to BYU's recruiting class that we can break down next week.
Thanks, guys.